Hello there, I'm Kaz. Let's talk about Cave Story.
Cave Story. The classic title by Daisuke Amaya. Cave Story is one of the-
Actually, let's not.
Look, Cave Story is a wonderful game, but frankly, what else is there to say about it that hasn't been said 100 times before? It's a great homage to Metroid, one of the best games ever made, forefather to the indie scene that swept the last console generation, and so on and so forth. As much as I enjoy reviewing good games, I usually like to come at it from a different angle, or add something new to the discussion. There is absolutely nothing else that can be said about Cave Story that hasn't already been said by somebody else. I know it's good, you know it's good, and if you don't know what I'm talking about, then what are you waiting for? Cave Story isn't just a great game, it's a great game that's free. There are versions you can pay for, of course, be it Steam, DSiWare, WiiWare, 2 versions on the 3DS, and so on, but regardless of which version you play, Cave Story is an absolute must-play that has cemented itself in gaming history. The only thing that can be said is that it's a shame that Cave Story is the only title that Studio Pixel is known for. They've made several other titles, some of which even predate Cave Story, like Ika-chan in 2000, a charming aquatic platformer that stops just before it starts, and have continued to create them up to this very day. The newest of these being touted as the successor to Cave Story, Kero Blaster. Originally known as Kero Blaster, Kero Blaster is the latest blast from the past brought to you by Amaya-san and Studio Pixel. A quirky little side-scroller, is Kero Blaster a smashing retro throwback? Or has Studio Pixel croaked out a dud? Let's find out. The story is nothing worth noting. You play as a silent frog named... What was the name? Hold on a second. Actually, they don't give him a name, assuming it is he. Nor do they give names for any of the characters, which is kind of strange. Well, regardless of the lack of names, you're tasked with fixing several teleporters around town from these strange black creatures. All the while, these things slowly corrupt the town without you even knowing. It's a neat premise, things getting worse despite you trying to make them better, but Kero Blaster does not deliver a satisfying payoff. While there does feel like there is something deeper going on, it's difficult to find what theme or message the plot is trying to convey because the overarching narrative is so weak. They don't even mention the name of the company that you're working for once in the entire game. Characters are one note and never develop, and it comes off as a means of connecting the game from level to level, rather than telling a good story within the game itself, which may be due to the change in genre, but I digress. While it's not necessarily bad, there's nothing much to note about Kero Blaster's plot. It works in keeping the flow of the gameplay, but nothing more. First things first. No, this game is not like Cave Story, nor is it as good as Cave Story. Kero Blaster is a side-scrolling action title a la Contra. You jump through 7 stages while blasting down enemies, beating bosses, and grabbing various weapons in a similar fashion to Mega Man. These weapons all feel unique, and can be upgraded with money found from defeated enemies or in chests, which helps distinguish them further from each other and power up your arsenal. The level design is solid, all the stages feel unique, as do the enemies, and the bosses provide a hearty challenge to a fairly difficult game. It all makes for a different, but all-around enjoyable experience, and gives Kero Blaster a distinct identity of its very own. Though the last stage does recycle quite a bit from previous ones, and the game can be beaten in a single sitting, it does have enough interesting mechanics and solid levels to be an entertaining title that stands on its very own. However, there is one major problem, a fatal flaw that damages the entire experience from the first to final level. When you press the fire button, you continuously fire in that one direction. While firing, you can't switch directions until you stop firing. Now, at first, you can see why they designed the shooting to be like this. That way, you could back away from an enemy and still shoot at them from a safe distance. However, there were 2 issues with this setup. First of all, many of the levels are not designed to compensate for the lack of control when firing. This means you either have to take your time and carefully shoot your way through a given part of a stage, or you have to stand in one spot and keep firing until all the enemies are gone, both of which completely destroy the fast-paced playstyle that Kero Blaster is clearly aiming for. Secondly, if my memory serves me well, several of the games that Kero Blaster is trying to pay tribute to gave the option to choose between a free fire mode and a much more controlled aim for shooting. This game only gives you one option, and it's not one that works in your favor. You can't even argue that it's made to emulate the refined controls of the classics because the controls in Kero Blaster are simply too stiff. They're not as loose or as free as a lot of other old school titles, and don't feel quite as responsive as they should. For the record, this wasn't because of my Chromate keyboard, because I switched over to a controller only to get the same results. It always feels like you have to tap the D-pad twice just to get them to work properly or aim your gun in the right direction. It's rather sad to see a much older title that another title is trying to pay homage to has better controls in every way, shape, and form. Most retro throwbacks take the best quality of their predecessors and add their own twist to it, or smooth out the rough edges, not amplify the flaws like the unfair difficulty of the quarter-pumping arcades and their NES counterparts. Actually, calling Kero Blaster unfair may be going a bit too far. Checkpoints are frequent, health upgrades and items each of the more difficult stages, and the game is fair enough not to make you go through any of the challenges or mini-bosses once you beat them, most of the time at least. However, the controls negate any goodwill these factors try to compensate for. That and the fact that plants hurt you when you touch them. No, really. The plants will hurt you if you touch them.
Really? Plants that hurt you when you touch them? Let's test the theory, shall we? Well, I'm still alive.
For that matter, it's a maddening decision to make these controls so restrictive when you could freely shoot in any of 4 directions in Cave Story. In Kero Blaster, you can't even shoot downwards. Instead, it forces you to switch weapons and slowly wait for any enemies to go down before you can further progress through the level. I know I've been harping on the controls a lot in this review, but it says a lot when a game stumbles so hard in one department that its predecessor flawlessly executed, let alone one that was made in 2004. In 2014, this is unacceptable. Needless to say, the controls take some time to get used to. If this is how the controls work for the PC version, then I can only imagine how they are on iOS. While that's the only main issue with regards to gameplay, it's not the only one. When looking through tabs back to the game, Kero Blaster wouldn't start up, instead saying graphics restore, okay, and then cutting to a black screen with the music still playing. Eventually I figured out that pressing the spacebar would fix this, something which I've never had to do with any game on PC just to get it to work properly. In addition, on one boss battle, the character would keep moving to the left no matter which direction I picked on the keyboard or controller. Technical issues aside, Kero Blaster is forgettable fun for $8. It's a decent, if unsubstantial title that fans of old school shooters won't want to miss. For fans of Cave Story, there's not much to recommend, with its weaker controls, lack of replayability, and overall lesser quality. Finally, the presentation. As you may have guessed, Kero Blaster is not the latest title to push your graphics cards to its limits, but, much like the gameplay, it crafts a unique style with a charm of its very own. At times, Kero Blaster can be downright wonderful to look at, bright and colorful with some fine, if simplistic pixel work for backgrounds, and atmospheric environments. It's a simple looking title, and a fine one at that, but it's an absolutely lovely one to listen to. The soundtrack goes from upbeat and catchy to gloomy and atmospheric from one level to the next, with each succeeding level pumping out even better melodies than the last one. There were some excellent tunes sprinkled throughout this adventure, with the boss battles having some especially well-crafted songs. As grand as the music may be, it's a shame that the rest of this game couldn't achieve the same high level of quality.
Even though it was obvious that it could never match its predecessor, Kero Blaster is a disappointingly decent title that's likely to be forgotten about in a couple of weeks, earning a 6.5 out of 10. Man, 2014 has been full of disappointments. But I'm sure that the next title I'm going to review will be much better. Alright, let's see. What's next on the list? Oh! Yaiba Ninja Gaiden Z. "2014 sucks. Until next time, game on, my friends." Ugh. That's the next one I have to review. Yaiba Ninja Gaiden Z.